with today's lecture. Okay, so today we will talk about 3-3, the corner move 3-3, and the reason why we should not use it, or why it's not recommended by Katago. As human beings, I think we can still play it. It's not extremely disadvantageous, but from an AI perspective, it's not good because, well, there are three main reasons, I think. And the first reason is that it's actually not a good ladder breaker. And if you're wondering, oh, who cares about ladder in the beginning of the game? Well, right now, if black wants to invade 3-3, there's already a ladder issue here. So let me show you the ladder real quick. So white blocks this side. And then this is just some really straightforward 3-3 invasion Joseki. And say white cut. So a lot of times we've seen this Joseki being played out. And at this point, a lot of times black is supposed to play a knight's move and run out. And if ladder's no good, white would have to play like, white would have to play like this. Meaning that in the future, black can potentially extend this stone and kill off these three stones in the future. So white takes influence, black can potentially take quite a bit of territory. So this would be like a even Joseki. But when the ladder is good for white to capture this stone, then there's no reason to like potentially give up three stones. White can just directly capture the cutting stone. And this, I know it looks like, oh, black's corner is over here, but if you read it out, you realize that in the end, white would Atari, black with this, with this move, and then black would extend, and then white would push black all the way down to the first line, and then black would just die. So yeah, if you read out the ladder, you'll realize that the 3-3 is actually a pretty bad, well, it's not an effective ladder breaker for you. In the beginning of the game already. So that's one issue. And let's look at if black has better options when he invades the corner. So here, instead of capturing a second line stone, maybe black can consider just capturing this. But then here comes another issue, that is in the very beginning of the game, black has just lived in a tiny little corner, whereas white completely sealed the outside. And this result is still not very good for black. So if you don't have the ladder, invading 3-3 becomes not very favorable, just because white has pretty good options against your 3-3 invasion. So yeah, this stone is not a good ladder breaker. So if you were on the fourth line, white wouldn't be able to capture the cutting stone with the ladder. So that's one thing to be mindful of. And another issue regarding the 3-3 move is that it's pretty weak at delivering attacks. So let's play some really simple AI Joseki moves here and there first, so that it makes it easier to compare between the 3-3 point and the 4-4 point. So really quick. Okay, so say right now black wants to play a bend and increase the potential for the top side of the board. Then what white can do right now is a really simple and straightforward invasion. So against this invasion, black has a few ideas. You either defend the corner or you pincer. So let's look at the pincer first, because typically when our opponent invades, we would want to somehow attack it. But right now, the issue is that black's spacing here, it's not very spacious. It doesn't create a ton of value. So when you see that your opponent has a somewhat narrower extension, one way to take advantage of that is an attachment. So for a simple example, let's consider black extends. Okay, so if black extends, black is trying to maximize the value on the top side. But right now, after white has gained, 3 stones on one side of the board, white can now consider a counter, like a double approach against the 3/3 stone. And then you see that the 3/3 stone is kind of lonely and cramped. It's somewhat difficult for black to play well around this corner. So for example, if black wants to live, then it's quite passive. White is already gaining good influence, blocked off the right side, and black still is not alive, and black is still not alive. And now that black is finally alive, white can capture 1 stone, and now white's group is 100. Well, it's like 90% alive. It's really strong, and white has limited black to a very small corner with no potential. The only thing that black gained is a little bit of this kind of territory, and you can see now this stone initially that black initially played because he wanted to develop the top side. It's not worth a whole lot of points. It's probably worth like maybe this much with some potential. So it's, yeah, black is not very efficient in this diagram. So when you realize that you can kind of over concentrate your opponent's stone due to a narrower extension, that is when this kind of attachment is really useful. Okay? So that's that regarding this kind of pincer. So say black knows that if he pincers, he might get too over concentrated and he decides to, develop the right side instead. Then now there's another issue that black has to face. That is, white can play an attachment. And say if black made this and that exchange, then black owes a move because in the future, white can consider a clamp. So black needs to do something. Or let me give you an example. If say black does not defend and decides to attack, then white can just directly clamp to the corner. And if black connects, then you can see that the corner, black just lost the entire corner. Yeah, so, and if black defends this way, then white can just extend and black will have to crawl on the second line to live, which is really bad, yeah. So, meaning that right now, black owes a move. If black, has to spend a move like this, then white can just comfortably take an in 2-space extension, and white has plenty of eye space. So white is totally settled, and once again, you will see that this move is very much not valuable. And even after black spends a move on the right side, there are still potential invasion points, be it here or here. Yeah, so it's not like black can completely secure the right side either. And white has already successfully invaded the top side. So you can see that no matter if black pincers or defends, white was always able to come up with a decent follow-up. That is, black doesn't have a very severe attack or a great way to deal with white's approach. So let's look at another variation where, yeah, the pincer variation, because it's more complicated. So let's look at what happens if black does not play passively. Previously, we talked about a second line attachment to live. Say black, pokes out the elephant eye and tries to attack. So here, black has a, a severe cutting point. So here white can just take advantage of that. And the moment white captures, white is already alive. So white is safe. Black, however, is not safe. So he needs to run. Keep running. And then, okay, fine. Now black is all connected. And white kind of owes a move to live here now, because black can potentially kill with this move. So white can Sente just block here, just threaten to cut black. And then now, if black plays here again, white can block and there will be a gote, right? So this is a way that white can Sente live the top side. And now white just comfortably, play an extension and take the right side. So white has invaded the top. White has built the group on the right. Black's corner spent so many moves and he still didn't amount to any significant territory. The only thing that black is kind of proud of is that he has some influence in the center, but it's not easy to create center territory just because there is a white group right next to black's wall. So this is also a favorable result for white. So yeah, there's a more complicated variation where black tries to counterattack here. So key is to remember to cut and then Sente live your top group, okay? And so let's look at what would happen if black switches direction instead of increasing his potential for the top side. Let's say black goes to this side, tries to increase the potential for the right side instead. So if black plays like this, then white can actually choose a different direction of invading, right? You can always just choose the most valuable side for your invasion. I think that is also one of the most, the greatest weakness of playing the 3-3 point is that you're giving your opponent more options, better options for in terms of the direction of play that your opponent can choose. So if you play like this, white can choose to invade your most valuable side. And once again, we will look at some pincer and corner defense move, okay? So let's look at the pincer first. So this time, I would not recommend white playing this attachment just because there's a lot more space here. More space means more value that black can create. And if you make some exchanges like this, then black is basically gaining more strength to make territory here. And in fact, in this case, black can even consider giving up one stone and take Sente. So now, white owes a move, white needs to live. And black's corner is also settled with a 2-space extension. And now black takes Sente, honey on the 2 stones. And now you can see that the value that black can create around this side and the center is actually a lot more than the previous, than what we saw on the top side, just because black has a lot more space at the lower right corner. So in this case, when your opponent has good potential on, on the right side of the board, I would advise against an attachment, but just lean on the corner instead. Press it down to a lower position. So this knight's move is a very common move against the 3-3 corner. And it almost always works to press your opponent down to a lower position. So if black plays attachment, white can just extend and then extend. And here, white has a pretty interesting move. I mean, if white extends anymore, black actually has a pretty nice counter attack that he can play. So yeah, and if white bends, yeah, basically there's some bad aji here, and the bend is actually not that valuable just because black has stones already facing white's group. So instead of just extending here, white can consider this move. Try to make her group really strong first. And this move is pretty much forcing. Black cannot just jump out because if white gets a hane, then black is having huge aji issues in the corner. For example, black cannot even play a hane because white can just cut and destroy black. And if black cannot even play a hane, then black needs to somehow live in the corner. Then black's corner will become extremely small, and white's shape is pretty nice. It's basically very flexible, and it stretches to the center really well. And in the future, when white makes a tiger's mouth, white is already almost has a live shape. And whereas black's corner territory has suffered like severe damage. So this move is basically forcing black to defend against white's hane on the 3 stones, and therefore black needs to defend. Oh, sorry. So this move is quite forcing, and it's basically forcing black to defend his 3 stones from being hane, and after white gains such a thick wall, then white can consider shouldering hit this pincering stone. And this shoulder hit is a great move to limit black's potential on the side. For example, if black jumps out, then you can see that black is being pushed down to a very low position. And after playing all this, white basically forced black to take territory on the top side and also on the right side. But you would notice that black does not have any significant potential. There is not a chance that black can ever build a big moyo from this kind of game. So Katako would prefer this for white very much. So yeah, this is a way that white can play if she gets pincered. Basically lean on the corner and then shoulder hit back the pincering stone, and then basically limit black to a very low position overall. And here, since there's a lot more space, we can look at different kinds of pincers. For example, if black doesn't like how he got shoulder hit, maybe black can consider 2-space pincer instead. Then it's a little farther away from white, makes it safer from being shoulder hit, but white once again uses the knight's move, presses black down, and here instead of a shoulder hit, white can consider a cap. And if black defends his territory, then white can just calmly extend. And white's shape is still really powerful and has good influence, good control over the center, whereas black stones are still really low on the 3rd line, and we don't see significant potential that black can build right now. And if black doesn't like being on too low, then he can consider a high pincer, but there will be another issue that black will have to deal with. So once again, the knight's move, and here I'd like to introduce you to this hane. This hane is especially powerful if ladder is in your favor. So for example, if black, so crosscut is like this kind of crosscut is a pretty common shape. And here, the key for white to play the correct sabaki move is to atari and then extend. And then now you can see the miai of laddering this stone, because ladder is good for white. and also white, pushing down and destroying, taking away black's corner. So these 2 points become miai. So that's why the hane works. If black just extends, then that's just too painful. White can just defend, and yeah, black has to live on the second line. Yeah, that's just a really bad result. So here, the best that black could do is actually live like this. So tiger's mouth and then hane aiming at a double atari. White can defend. And then here, there's a really nice tetsuji that white has. Attach, and then this peep. So it's aiming at a double atari right at this tiger's mouth, right? So black needs to defend, and then white can extend. And now white is aiming at this cut, right? So this is also forcing. So if black defends, then now white can just comfortably make a base, because black has placed his stone to a high position. Previously, we talked about if black plays a low position, he could get shoulder hit, he could get capped. But now, if black plays a high pincer, then white can comfortably make, eye shape. So yeah, this is a pretty important variation for white to know, so that she can take advantage of this high position. So let's look at here. So we've gone through the bunch of pincer variations. Sorry. So let's look at what happens if black just defends the corner. So here, I would recommend that white plays the extension first, because when, again, the right side has a lot of space, has a lot of value. So playing a 2-space extension is going to be pretty good. And if black approaches here, then once again, this attachment is a great move, because after this exchange, black has to deal with, somehow defend to deal with white's claim. So if black plays like this, then there's too much space for invading the top side. So maybe black should consider a more efficient way of defending, but it still leaves a lot of bad aji and a lot of moves that white can take sente. So for example, like this, then if black captures, then the future, white might be able to get this kind of sente, and black is in a very inefficient and low position. Or if black takes like this, then it's already white's gain to make this a 4th and 3rd line exchange, and outside and inside exchange. And white has also enough space to make 2 eyes locally, especially with some supporting stones on the outside. So this kind of result is pretty good for white, considering, yeah, white also takes sente. So let's look at, so we covered the, like a 3rd line approach against the 3/3 stone, and turns out white has a really good choice. Basically, wherever black wants to build his moyo, be it bending here or extending here, white can always choose the more valuable side for invading, and that's one of the really big issues with the 3/3 corner. That is, your opponent gets to choose a better invasion point. And for the 3rd reason why we should not, or why Katako does not prefer the 3/3 point is about the corner defense move. So say black does not play either A or B, black just plays a corner defense move. So a typical move would be like this: large knight's move, I mean, it looks pretty nice because it's stretching over a pretty large area, but it actually has some weaknesses that white can take advantage of. For example, when black plays like this, white can immediately play here, and it is forcing, because if black tenukis, white can just jump right in here and then split the corner and into 2 bits, and that would be pretty bad for black. So since it's forcing, black will need to defend here somehow. And then after making this exchange, white can then choose to split the board, the right side of the board. If black plays a 2-space extension, then white can just descend here. And you can see that white got like a 3-space extension, which is quite comfortable. And if black plays Hane, for example, then white can just take this 2-space extension. Then basically, white spend 1 move here, forcing black to answer with 2 moves. That's already white's gain, right? So yeah, and white was able to play another move that's of, I'd say, critical importance, because after white gets a base, black doesn't have a base. So this is one way of how to utilize or how to take advantage of black's large knights move. And we can also look at the case where black plays like this. So now the top side, it's more cramped, unlike the previous, the right side. So now the white's response still starts with this move, but now instead of playing all the way over here, white can choose to play the large knight's move instead. And if black, wants to take away white space, white has a really interesting sabaki move, that is this Hane. So obviously black can capture this stone, or at least cut this stone. And here white would extend, not giving black a Panuki. And if black, say he plays an extension, he wants to fight, then white immediately just gives up the 2 stones. And now you can see with white's double tiger's mouth, white has really good eye shape, and there's still some aji of running these 2 stones. So white's invasion was, it's a really easy invasion for white. Basically, her invasion is already successful. And actually, you can see how useless the 3/3 stone is. It ends up being like an empty triangle. And yeah, no matter what black plays, be it a diagonal or if it's diagonal, white can still do this. And in fact, the 2 stone has more breathing room for running out. And I think the worst that black could ever play is this extension, because white this time would just connect directly, and the liberties of these 2 stones are really short. And so basically the key is for this sabaki sequence is to give up 2 stones and then make a double tiger's mouth. And here, if black does not attack or does not cut white, then his best move would probably be something like this. And then white takes a comfortable base. Or if black does not want to give white a base, then white gets a really nice atari to make eye shape. So either way, it was quite easy for white to invade this without much pressure or being under attack at all. So yeah, I hope this is a pretty clear example of how white can take advantage of this large knight's move, and then white can just first play, some sort of large, like a sente move against the large knights, and then play a splitting stone, and then aiming at potentially taking this 2-space extension or making a good shape locally. So let's see. Okay, so now after going through these variations, so in summary, we know that if black plays the 3-3 move, white will have a better option of for approaching the black's 3-3 stone, depending on which side he wants to develop. And also, if white does not approach black when black plays a corner defense move, white can also take advantage of that large knight's shape and make it really easy for white to invade later on. So yeah, those are some pretty severe disadvantages of playing the 3-3 move. And now let's compare that to the 4-4 position. So for example, if black spends a move defending, and let's say white, plays a bend here, trying to develop, the lower side potential, what would happen if black, tries to invade directly? So previously, when we were at the 3-3 point, we talked about how pincering wasn't great. So obviously now if white pincers, they would be really bad because black, white would definitely be over concentrated. Like white cannot like spend an extra move over here and get all over concentrated. So so in this case, given that black is in the 4-4 point, black has a really good move to deal with this kind of approach. That is a really simple kick. Basically, every time when you realize that the pincering move is not valuable enough, that indicates that this side of the board doesn't contain much value. And if you have identified that the lower side is not of much value, then you should really kick it. You always give the least valuable part of the board to your opponent. So now black claims the lower side, but it's only like a few points, right? So it doesn't really hurt. And in fact, for the next move, white can even just play Hane. And then you can see how white has claimed all of these points with a really simple Hane, and it also exposes black a cutting point. So black is not even settled yet. And white has, secured a ton of corner territory. And this kind of kick is really powerful. And it's a kick that the 3-3 point does not have. When you're at 3-3, your position is so low that you can't even kick your opponent. Whereas if you are at the 4-4 or the 4-3 point, you can kick your opponent and secure large amount of corner territory. So that's one of the huge advantage that I think the 4-4 point has over the 3-3 point. That is, it can take even more territory than the 3-3. So that's one thing. And let's look at what happens if white tries to expand the moyo for the left side. Say black tries to invade the most valuable part of the board. Then here, white does not need to kick because previously we talked about how there's more space around this area. And in this case, when you actually want a particular side of the board, you can consider a pincer. So previously, if white were at the 3-3 point, black always has the knight's move to press white or to press the opponent to a really low position, right? But now white is at the 4-4 point. It's not like black has any sort of effective knight's move because white is just going to claim a lot of territory. So what this is forcing black to do is that this pincer forces black to enter the 3-3. And if this is played out, then you will see that white has successfully switched sides to the side that she wants to develop. So basically, the intent of the pincer was fulfilled, and I'd say this is successful for white because I'd say white has a stronger choosing power because she has an effective pincer. Whereas when you play the 3-3 point, you don't get this kind of power to choose because when your opponent plays like a knight's move against your opponent, it was all forcing, it's always forcing you to live in this small corner area. So this is another example of how I guess 4-4 point is better because you have, the ability to pinch your opponent and choose the side of the board that you believe is the most valuable. That's something that the 3-3 point did not have. And here, if you're wondering, oh, but black can just choose to simply jump out. And yes, that's true, but white just needs to simply jump with black. And if black just plays these kind of, I'd say, jumpy moves, then you will realize that his stones don't make good territory, nor does it make really incredible influence. Whereas white has the potential to develop territory on both sides of the board. So that's why a lot of times when you see someone gets pincered, a lot of times, you would think of playing the 3-3 invasion because entering the 3-3 actually generates territory, whereas black playing like this does not generate any sort of territorial compensation. It's just running without points. So yeah, I hope that kind of explains why why AI would prefer the 4-4 point over the 3-3 corner.